Okay, we're live. Ryan, can you go ahead and talk for me?
Uh, red, blue, green, orange, salmon.
Okay. I guess that works.
It's just, I mean, it's words, isn't it?
Yeah, it's words. It's words. That it definitely is. Um, yeah. I don't like this green background, but I'm not changing it now. So, yeah. You ready to get into this?
Yeah,
All right. Hello and welcome to You Have to Watch This podcast. I'm Alan,
I'm Ryan.
and each week on You Have to Watch This podcast, we make each other watch films one of us has never seen before. Today, we're returning to our roots in the most original way that we can. We are talking about the sequel to Gladiator, which was the second film we ever did on this podcast back in 2016, 9 years ago. We are talking today about Gladiator II. So it's kind of fitting that Devon ditched us for Brie Larson tonight. Um, Devon has had a opportunity to go see Captain Marvel and Riz from Greece in a show on the West End. So um, there were worse things he could do. Um, but yeah, so it's just me and
Yeah,
Ryan tonight. Um, but before we get into Gladiator 2, Ryan was off last week, leaving me and Devin to talk about Saturday Night Live and make fools of ourselves on the internet. My Matt Foley costume is still sitting beside me here. Um, so we like to take a few moments and just catch up on things that we've been watching in pop culture over the last week or so. I don't have much. I've had a pretty busy week. I will say I was asked to be a judge at a 48-hour film contest over the weekend and got to see some very fun films created by some film students. Uh,
cool.
and it was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, that's I don't really have anything to show for that, but it was a lot of fun seeing what students can come up with such little time and getting
Yeah,
to work together and create something fun. And you and I have done the 48-hour film thing a few times, and it's
yeah.
always we have stories from each time we've done it. Let's do it again.
Yes.
But Ryan, how have you
Yeah.
been? What
Yes.
have you been watching?
Um, oh, there was a movie that I wanted to talk about if I was able to make it on the last show, and that's The Gorge. It's a Apple TV. It's a movie that was produced by Apple TV.
Okay.
Um, it's got Miles Teller,
Mm-hmm.
Anya Taylor-Joy, and funny enough, Sigourney Weaver is also in it. She plays a small role, but
Okay.
it's a decent sci-fi movie. It's kind of also like a romance. I see IMDb has it listed as dark romance, monster horror, and survival. Um, it's a good, simple premise. Two highly trained snipers from one from the Western political spectrum, one from the Eastern political spectrum, are tapped to watch over this gorge on either side,
Okay.
um, they're not supposed to communicate, but they communicate anyway. Um, that's where the dark romance part falls in. But then they try to figure out what's in the gorge, and I feel like the idea for this movie, if it wasn't already a book, because I have no idea, it might be. But if it was not a book and this is, an original story by someone, um, I would not be surprised if The Last of Us was kind of an inspiration, and I'll just leave it at that when it
Okay.
comes to like what's in the gorge. Um, Decent. I don't know if it's going to be going on my list for you guys just yet, um, but it might. but I like it. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't overly blown back by it. It was just a good sci-fi movie.
Okay.
So,
I've been watching a lot of Apple TV Plus, mainly just for Severance. Have you had a chance to watch that yet on there?
no, I have not, but I've definitely seen a lot of the promotional stuff for it, and it's very good. I have to
Yeah.
say.
You keep jumping a little bit. I don't know what's going on, but you keep cutting in and out. So apologies for that. It's not. It's not our. It's not us going out there. It's something on Ryan's end. So I apologize
It's
to the
something on my
viewers.
end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all right. We're just having technical difficulties out the wazoo tonight. All right, cool. I'll have to check that out. I've yet to watch anything on Apple TV that I haven't enjoyed. They've
Yeah.
selected some high quality content. So I'll probably check this out even if you don't make us watch it on the podcast. As I said, I don't really have much to talk about this week, so let's get into today's main topic because it's a doozy. We're talking about 2024's Gladiator II, part of the Glicked weekend back in November. This came out with the film Wicked. So, Ryan, this was your pick. You go ahead and take it away as I sip on my coffee.
Okay. Yeah. So, Gladiator 2, for people who were not aware that the sequel of a Gladiator was coming out, came out last year. And it follows one of the original characters from the original movie into adulthood and just dealing with Roman culture. Without spoiling it right from the start, that's pretty much what it is.
I mean, I think you just gave
I
away a pretty big spoiler from the get go.
Well, I mean, we will get into it more specifically, but yes, I probably did. But then at the same time, the trailers kind of allude to it anyway.
Yeah.
But this was a movie that I was really interested in because I love the original one. It was like Devin, like what Alan said. Sorry. It was one of the it was either the first or second movie we did for the show. I can't remember if it was Superman or this.
It was
That we first.
this was your Gladiator 1 was your very first pick for this podcast. I remember vividly bringing my laptop and the crappy little karaoke mics that I got for the podcast and being in your spare room at your apartment recording over like a storage bin. We put the laptop on and we were just sitting there talking about Gladiator. So yeah, this was our second episode. So this goes back to the roots of you have to watch this podcast because that the first film where you were like, okay, this is important enough for us to talk about on a podcast was Gladiator.
Yeah.
And then I spent an hour shitting on it.
I don't really remember that part. But yeah.
I didn't.
Okay.
I've actually gone back and
Yeah,
watched. I've actually watched Gladiator since we did it on the podcast, in bits and pieces.
Oh.
Like it's one of those ones that shows up on Paramount Plus on like Showtime every once in a while, like on the live channels.
Yeah.
So I'll tune in and watch it, and then I'll be like, okay, this is taking way too long to get to the fun stuff, so I'm just gonna change it over. Because I always catch it at the beginning when it's like the Pirates of the Caribbean music. But no, I liked the first Gladiator. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the I was really looking forward to this one as soon as I found out that it was happening and that Denzel Washington was on it. I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, but it popped up on streaming before I even thought it was going to. So I made sure to watch it as soon as I had an opportunity to. And as a really big fan of the first one, to the point where I actually indulge myself into like fan theories for it, I enjoyed this one to no end. Um, I felt that they did just enough parallels and enough callbacks um, for it to make for someone who had never seen the first one, but not too much that someone who had would be like, okay, I get it. Um, and the acting by everyone was pretty well done. Um, so, Alan, you said that you liked the first one.
Yes.
You've watched it here and since then. What did you think, like, overall? What did you think of this one?
So when it was first announced that Ridley Scott was doing Gladiator 2, I was like, okay, old man, calm down. You're not actually going to make Gladiator 2. Because it's 20 some years later. He died at the end of the first one. What's this movie going to be? So I was like, I don't know. Wasn't too excited for it. And then it came out and I started hearing good things about it. And some crazy things about it. And I was like, okay, I'm intrigued, but I'm still going to wait for Ryan to make me watch this on the podcast because I know you and this film has everything you like. It's a sequel to Gladiator and it has Denzel Washington. Those are like two of the check marks on things that will make us watch a movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. It made
Awesome.
it made sense as a sequel. It did some things that other films have done, but it did them better. Like I'll talk a little bit about some of the parallels I saw in this later. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was going one way with some of the characters' dynamics, and then it went another way, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." I didn't expect to be rooting for you in this. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I have questions. Lots and lots of questions about some of the choices they made.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed it. It's a ridiculous film in parts, but I think it was a good sequel.
I am so happy to hear that from you. I really am. Because like honestly, we've been doing this for so long that the Devon's not here, obviously, but we've all kind of gotten a little bit of a sixth sense at this point to kind of judge. Okay, I don't think he's going to really like this, or I think he is, or I don't really think Alan's going to like this, or I think he is. And I know it's
Yeah.
vice versa for everyone else. This one I was on the fence about, just because of how the movie is itself. And
Yeah.
I asked Devin for notes since he couldn't make it tonight. And from all of the notes he gave me, because he doesn't really answer that specific question that I had, he definitely liked this movie.
I was going to
Actually, no, he
say
did.
he
Said,
was
you know,
go for it.
yeah, I said, I know the plot doesn't make a ton of sense, but I really had fun with it. It's like the definition of a popcorn movie, is what he said.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's a late fall blockbuster. I think part of the reason I refuse to see this in theaters is they were trying to do this Barbenheimer thing with Gladiator and Wicked, and called it Glicked Weekend. And I was like, no, like that you're forcing it. Like they were forcing it like 10 months before that opening weekend. I was like, no, I refuse to participate in that. And I saw Wicked instead. So, but
Okay.
yeah, I have some thoughts on things. So I'm sure you have a long
Okay.
list of questions for me. So let's talk about them.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, you go first
Okay.
with what you want to bring up.
Um, I will say this. Looking at Ridley Scott's filmography, he doesn't do many sequels. I will say that he did Hannibal, which I enjoyed, but he didn't direct the
Yeah.
first one. The one like direct sequel that he's made, I absolutely hated. And I'm Prometheus. I'm not counting as a sequel. That's a prequel. But the sequel to Prometheus, Alien Covenant, I was not a fan of.
Really?
Yeah, I did not like
I
that.
forget. Did we do that one?
We did. You made us watch it
Okay.
for the podcast, and I was not a fan.
Yeah. Okay.
And I liked Prometheus, but this, I think part of my problem with Alien Covenant was it was so close to the original, and it like didn't address the issues from Prometheus that like it doesn't really show you too much detail what happened to the characters at the end of that, and it introduces you to these new ones. This one does a really good job of explaining why you should care if you like the first film so much, why you should care about these characters and who they are and what their connection is to everything that happened in the first film. Because Connie Nielsen's back, and she's about the only connecting thread between the two films, actor wise at least.
Yeah.
But I liked how each character referenced the events of the first films and the characters there. Not even just Maximus, but also the first Dumbledore. Richard Harris's character at the beginning.
Yeah.
Gosford Park, or MacArthur Park himself.
Yeah. And then his son.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amicus. Yeah, that's something that I actually really enjoyed about this is the being the connection thread is her, and then you've got the rest of the characters. You got Pascal's character, which first when this movie first started, and I think this is something that you referenced before, like I would say maybe up until about halfway through the movie, I was really excited because I'm like, I haven't seen him as a villain before. Like I haven't seen him playing like the person you're not supposed to like before, period, like in a movie. And then halfway through it turns it on you.
Yeah.
And like I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't disappointed in that. It was just I didn't really see it coming until
It does a bait and switch with him where you think that they're setting him up to be the final conflict, because you even have Denzel Washington being like, I'm going to take you in, that you want his head, I will get you his head. And you think that it's going to end up being Paul Mescal versus Pedro Pascal in the arena, because they marketed it. Like I remember seeing marketing with Pedro in the arena fighting Lucius, and it's like, okay, this is what they're building to. And but what the film does so well, and we're going to get into spoilers for this, is it kind of turns that. Like you think Denzel's on your side, but he's really like the puppet master and like playing chess while everyone else is playing Chutes and Ladders.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I really enjoyed that because I was like, oh, okay, Denzel seems cool. But then the slow reveal of everything he's manipulating, and it was like a condensed version of Game of Thrones to a point. But it reminded me of another film. Can you guess what other film this reminded me of, like in elements? What kind of shirt do you have on? What shirt do you have on? What shirt do you have on?
Star Wars.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It reminded me of Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
I was like it. I made the comparison of, like it reminded me a lot of the prequels. Like, I wish they had done the prequels as well as Gladiator II did it. Like, Denzel's like working in the shadows to take over, become the Emperor,
Yeah.
and like his deceit and his manipulations are so vile, and he's just chewing up the scenery. It's like I wish George Lucas could have done that for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because you even have like they keep talking about the fall of Rome, like Rome's going to fall. It's like it gave me Revenge of the Sith vibes.
I could. Yeah. I mean, with you explaining it, I can totally see that. I didn't think of it. I didn't. I didn't. I didn't think of that before. But it definitely fits. Um, and speaking of Denzel Washington, he had the best response to a reporter about his role because, I mean, I absolutely loved him in this simply because you could tell that he was having fun with it, and that's something that's by Devon and the notes that he gave, that you can tell that Denzel Washington like had fun in this role, and he was in an interview recently, and he was asked about not getting nominated for it. And he literally said, and I'm going to paraphrase here because I can't remember it word for word. He basically said, "I don't care," because simply because it was a fun role for him. Like he
Yeah,
couldn't have cared less about not getting nominated because he liked the experience of actually doing it. Because I think you see this at the end of really successful actors, um, really successful actors and actresses when they get towards the tail end of their career or when they've hit a level of fame that they feel that they've accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, they start doing roles that just they want to have fun with. The youngest person that I can point to kind of like prove my 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 thought on this is Daniel Radcliffe.
hmm
Like just doing the Harry Potter movies set him up financially for the rest of his life. So what's he been doing since? Complete off the wall characters.
yeah.
He does random stage plays every now and then. And Denzel Washington's been doing that. Brad Pitt's been doing that a long time. Um, DiCaprio's been doing stuff like that, where they take roles simply because. I mean, hell, Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder.
Yeah,
I believe I got the title right.
yeah,
Like, I feel like this is Denzel Washington's like a role that he took simply because he could have fun with it, not because he was looking to get anything really out of it.
yeah. One of my favorite things that came out of the press tour for this was a quote from Denzel Washington, where somebody had asked him about like advice for other actors. And this is what he said: the first part of your life you learn, the second part of your life you earn, the third part of your life you return. He's definitely in that return uh,
Yeah,
phase where he's. I know he does a lot of charity stuff and like um, d- does a lot of like fundraising and charitable work, but he also is like returning to his audience. Like he's like, I'm going to give you something entertaining to watch.
yeah,
So
and that's definitely something. Yeah, and that definitely fits because if like I find the parallels between like where it's like at the start of his career he was learning, and you can definitely tell with another movie that I brought to the podcast in the start of his career, which was Virtuosity.
I knew you were going to
Like
say
you can
that.
really tell. Watch, of course. You can tell that he was still early in his career. He hadn't really ironed out his style yet, and now he's kind of going back to where he's doing a role just for the fun of it, and you can tell that even the role that he's doing just for fun all of those experiences and everything he learned, he's pouring into it, even though he probably assumed that he wasn't going to get nominated, which a lot of people wanted him to, just because of how like crazy his character is in this.
Well, so
Um,
this film did get nominated for some stuff. What did it get nominated for? Let's take a look. If that link will work.
for scenes involving rhinos.
It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Achievement in Costume Design.
Okay.
It's been nominated for a few other awards. Hasn't won anything yet. He did get fourth place at the Dallas Fort Worth Film Critics Association Awards.
Okay.
He was nominated for a Golden Globe. So
No. Okay.
yeah,
So, okay. Well, I mean, he's getting recognition for it in other places, so that's good. Um, so about the main spoiler thing that I kind of hinted at before, and you said that I kind of did the spoiling already. Um, One of the things that I loved about this movie was that it took a fan theory that I had thought about for a long time, and when I went online, looking stuff up years ago, I found that other people that it wasn't a rare thing for people to think. So in the original movie, they set up at Russell Crowe's character and what's her name? The daughter, the actress, the one that's in this one.
Cuddy Nielsen, Lucia.
Yes, that they had a prior relationship when they were younger. Um, and they make of and when during that conversation where they set up that they have a history with each other. They ask about each other's children, and they're both around the same. His kid is a little bit younger than Lucius is. Um, and I always kind of thought as I got older that what if Lucius be what if Lucius was his kid and not her dead husband that they refer to in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that was just a fan theory. It was just, oh, wouldn't that lay an extra layer of like drama for their relationship? And I wasn't expecting the main character in this to be Lucius. I was trying not to have any type of like expectations from this movie in case it turned into Independence Day 2 for me. Um, so when they said that his name was Lucius and they actually have him interacting with his mom, that was the major things for me that made me love this movie. Because I don't really get that a lot, where something I think is actually something that plays out. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I don't really put a lot of stock into wanting things to happen in
Yeah.
films. So,
I don't know if you had spoiled me with that fan theory 8 years ago when you talked about it on the podcast, but I had always assumed that was the case, that he was his father and they had an
yeah.
affair or something. So I wasn't surprised by it. Like, I guess I should have been, but I was like, okay, that's who this guy is. Got it. Let's go.
I kind of have a feel, and from how prevalent that idea was when I came across it, like when I found that other people were thinking the same thing, like I have the I have a feeling that 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 was the common reaction that people were
Mm-hmm.
having. That they'd see it, they'd feel that Lucius was his kid and not her, dead husband's, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. What else do you want to talk about?
I want to get into the fight scenes because one of the things that I like about this movie is that it's much quick. So, a few things: the fight scenes and the way that this movie flowed. So, the movie does have a problem with a lot of people, including my wife, where it can drag. I am typically not a slow burn movie person, but Gladiator for the first half of the movie is definitely a slow burn
Yeah.
because they're establishing how high up in the Roman army Maximus was, and then how far his descent was before he comes back to Rome.
Yeah.
And they spend literally an hour on that prior to even getting into Rome and actually him being, a gladiator in the Colosseum and not some far off territory of Rome. There's a lot of art house style scenes in the original one. They allude to that a little bit in in uh, in this one, but the pacing of this movie is a lot quicker than the original. And I feel like that's going to actually make people more like. I feel like this one's going to end up being 25 years from now. I have a feeling there's going to be more people who are fans of the second one than of the first one, and not having anything to do with special effects or anything, but simply because of the pacing of this compared to the first one.
And just in time for Gladiator 3 to come out.
Yes.
So one of the things I've noticed rewatching the first Gladiator is the pacing. So I was worried about that going into this, but the pacing is very fast. It's very well paced. I've seen other movies drag where this is a long movie, but it goes by fast. Like it doesn't drag out too much, which I appreciate. Your mic cut out. There we go. I got you.
Here we go. 4 seconds it took to reset itself. Okay.
Yeah.
So part of the movie's flow compared to the first movie is the fight scenes, because the fight scenes in the first one drag out pretty long. The fight scenes in the second one are quick. They're to the point. There's not any unnecessary stuff going on, except for sharks, and I'll get to the shark.
Oh, jeez.
So one of the things in the trailers got me hyped for this was the water scene in the Colosseum, because they actually did that. The Romans did actually flood the Colosseum and do naval gladiator fights. That's something that they actually did. Whether or not they had sharks swimming around in the water underneath them while they were doing this, it's a Ridley Scott movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can buy that they flooded the Colosseum for naval battles, I guess.
Yeah.
The sharks, though. When I heard about that scene, that's what made me go, oh, maybe I should go see this in theaters. And I still didn't. Yeah. But I was like, I want to see this movie now. Like, and I kept telling people, I know something that happens in this movie. I'm not going to say what it is. I don't want to spoil it for you. But there's something that happens that's insane. And when you see it, you'll know. And that's what I'm talking about, is like, they're in the Colosseum on boats and it turns into Jaws. Like,
yeah,
it's just wild. Yeah, I did not know they actually flooded the Colosseum. But I'm curious though, when they flooded the Colosseum, did they leave that little island out in the middle of nowhere? Like, what was the point of that? Like, bring the boats in, but why that little island off to the side?
I I don't know, maybe to have a place for people to like if they fell off the boat, someplace they could like swim up on.
Ah,
I I, I really don't know. When it comes to this movie, when it came to the Gladiator movies, the first one is a bit more just traditional gladiator fighting on the dirt. They use the chariots. They reenacted ground battles, and I remember watching a documentary and Ridley Scott saying at one point during it that they wanted to do a naval battle because the Romans did used to flood the Colosseum and, like boat fight. And that made me want to, back in 2001, 2002, go, huh? And do some research. And it turned out that they did. They emptied out everyone in the bottom because underneath the floor it's just a maze of like rooms and hallways, and they would take everyone out and then just flood the Colosseum and bring in some small boats, and they would do what they did in the movie, minus the sharks, I believe.
I really wish. I really hope the Emperor was like, I want some freaking sharks with freaking laser beams attached to their head.
Oh, that would instantly turn it into a really weird sci-fi movie if that was the only reference to lasers.
Yeah.
So one of the things that my wife pointed out that I completely missed for like the first three scenes with the not twin emperors but the brothers,
Mm-hmm.
the like
Are they not? Are they supposed to be twins in the movie?
they might be fraternal twins
Okay.
if they're twins.
Okay.
But one of the actors, I didn't realize this, was the metalhead from the last season of Stranger Things, and I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
The taller one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that at first, and she pointed that out, and that made me care more about the Emperors than I did prior. Because I'm like, I was like, I've seen the first one. And there's enough parallels in this movie. The Emperors are crazy. I'm just going to expect them to do crazy things and not really think about it. But then when I found out who the one actor was, kind of cared a little bit more about what they were doing.
See, I knew it was him.
Yeah.
I knew it was Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things. But every time I saw him on screen now, I was just thinking, that's the Human Torch. And then Pedro Pascal showed up. I was like, that's Mr. Fantastic. Like, we got half of the Fantastic Four in this. And if you look at the Colosseum and how rocky it is, it's almost like the Thing is there. But yeah, every time they shared the screen, I was like, they're going to be in a movie together this summer. Yeah. I didn't think it would be possible to get an Emperor in there that's more unlikable than Joaquin Phoenix. But I did not care for the Emperors at all. Like, I was ready for them to like meet their end.
Well, especially the one. He was like the shorter one with the monkey. Like, I felt more sad for him. Like, not at the start, obviously. I hated both of them straight from the start. But the shorter one, I almost felt pity for. Not enough to see him live, but I felt bad for him because of how Denzel Washington's character was playing him, and like making him paranoid against his brother.
Yeah,
and it was just that dynamic goes to what you were talking about before about how like you don't really like before that moment, you know that Denzel's playing people to
Yeah.
like get power, but you don't really get the extent of how far he's willing to go to manipulate people until you get to that scene.
In that
Because he's
moment
playing
where,
both the brothers against each other.
yeah, in that moment where the brother pulls the knife on the other brother, when Denzel walks over behind him, I really expected him to stab the monkey brother and save the other one to like have a more legitimate claim to be
Yeah.
helping the emperor, but instead it's no, we're gonna just cut off his head, which I was not
Oh,
expecting. And then they had that weird Muppet looking Joseph Quinn head.
yes, that has to be the worst. That has to be the worst part of this movie is that prosthetic head. I don't like I with the amount of money they had behind this movie and the amount of and the people they had behind this and the fact that Ridley Scott was like the one directing it. How did that get
I
approved?
I don't know, but I really want somebody to take that viral song from when he was on Stranger Things, just put his face onto that head, saying, "I don't like this, Chrissy, wake up!" Like, um, can we talk about Pedro
Yeah,
Pascal in this
there,
a bit?
yeah. Yes, yes, please.
Um, I really thought that they do such a great job of setting him up as the villain, but then he's kind of like the hero on the outside of the
Yeah.
Colosseum. Like he's a Roman general who's like fed up with the emperors and trying to make Rome uh, the ideal Rome, and is ready to lead this uprising. And the only thing that comes in the way is Lucius coming back into the picture and sets him up for failure.
Yeah. And that's yeah, and Devin actually has a note about that. He said that he liked the parallels between Pedro and Paul for the first half. It added a lot of weight to their fight, and you didn't want to see either of them die.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, I felt the same way. Like I was hoping, I was like, okay, okay, how are both of them going to get out of this alive? How how is this going to happen? And obviously, you should know I should have known, being the movie that it is and the sequel to the movie that, that it's a sequel to, that Pedro was going to be the one that was going to fight the
Yeah.
arrow,
Yeah.
per se. Um, yeah.
That was the most amount of arrows. Like, I feel like he got shot with as many arrows as Hawkeye has shot in the whole MCU. Like, there were more arrows in Pedro Pascal than there were on the show Arrow that ran for 8 seasons. Like, it
But
was an insane amount of arrows.
I mean, maybe Wrigley Scott didn't want anyone leaving that scene thinking that he was going to be back. Like, oh, I got
Maybe.
shot by two arrows, but I lived.
Hey, that's what
No,
happens
they
when you take.
literally turned him into a pincushion.
Yeah. He looked like the guy from Hellraiser. Uh, but that's what happens when you take off your Beskar armor. So,
Yes, definitely that's what happens. Um, yeah, and so he's a good character for me to bring this one point up. I talked about parallels between and callbacks between the first movie and the second movie and
mhm.
how I felt like it was the right amount. What I really liked about this movie when it comes to parallels is this movie is almost set up the same exact way. Just like how Star Wars movies are supposed to be kind of like poems to each other.
Yeah.
They're up the same and they follow the same narrative. That's what this movie did, and I feel like it did it better than some of Star Wars movies, prequels and sequels to have come out. Just like you said about the, you know, when it comes to prequels, Because you've got this base. Basically, he's Maximus after his fall. Like that. That they're basically on the same journey.
Yeah.
Um, you've you've got the emperors who are pretty much the same between the two movies. Denzel Washington's character is a play on the original slave owner from the first one,
Yeah.
except to where the in the first one he actually cared. Well, he didn't really care about his gladiators. He cared about money, but he actually did care about Maximus and getting and basically giving Maximus what he wanted. Where where in this one Denzel Washington only cared about giving Lucius what he wanted up until it stopped benefiting Denzel Washington's
Yeah.
character. So
Yeah.
there's so many parallels between the first and second one when it comes to character arcs, character arcs and plot points that then shift at the end and are completely different
Yeah.
from where they were in the first one. And I really enjoyed that about this one, and I wasn't sure how that was going to go at first because when Lucius picked up the dirt on his farm and let it like hit the ground the same way that Maximus did in the first one, I was like, oh, I really hope.
Your mic cut out again. There we go.
Yeah.
You were saying when Lucius picked up the dirt on his farm.
Yeah, so when Lucius picked up the dirt on his farm, I was really afraid that there were. I was really afraid that it was just going to be the same story, just with different characters. And I mean, it kind of is, but it's different enough at the end of the character arcs that it was worth watching, and it felt new
Yeah.
to a.
Yeah, it definitely. This would have been an interesting film without. If you take the connections to Gladiator 1 out of it, I think this film still works.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the Denzel part. Like, when you get into the mother and son of it all, like, it doesn't really work as well. But, like, if you take the Denzel part, like, it really works well without those connections. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the movie was how it ended, because you have these two armies coming to meet each other at the walls of Rome, and it's building to this giant battle. But instead of the two
Yeah.
armies fighting with each other, it's just one-on-one. Paul Mescal and Denzel Washington, and I really enjoyed like the just the fight with the two armies behind them. That worked really well for me.
Oh yeah, no, that was I really enjoy that as well because it's like it's setting up a traditional like Hollywood epic from like the 50s or 60s,
Yeah,
like giant Roman war scene. And there's a part of me that was like really itching for that, like really wanting to see them try this. And but then you get that fight and it means more. There's more purpose to that fight than just the two armies slaughtering each
yeah,
other. And then you get that speech at the end, which I really, really liked. But Devin pointed this out, and now, this is all I'm going to be able to think of. He said the end speech is very funny because most of the armies couldn't have heard him.
I mean, yeah, that's a very Devon point to make. Um, um,
Now, what what I have to say to that in defense, even though yes, he is right. What I'm going to say for the movie logic part of it is that was kind of now the army coming to Rome would have had that problem. But
Okay.
no, because they were
They
sloped on either side. Because
they
the ground was sloped on either side.
either way, no one's
So,
no one in the back's hearing him.
well, no one in the very back is hearing him. But what I'm trying to get at is that the Greeks and the Romans were good at theater, and the Romans got it from the Greeks, building natural amphitheaters. And part of that is having the stage down low and all of the people sitting up high up a slope, so that your voice naturally carries. That's how both the armies were. They were at the bottom of a valley. So if Lucius was talking loud enough and it was quiet enough, then I would say probably 40% of the soldiers on either side were going to be able to hear every word he said. And then all of the soldiers behind were taking the cues from the soldiers in front of what to do. So the guys in the back saw the guys in the front basically put down their arms, or it's like walk up and do the whole peaceful thing. So they're like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. I don't know what that guy said, but
Yeah.
I guess we're at peace. I guess we're.
Any other final thoughts on Gladiator 2 before we wrap this up?
What I'm going to say is that if for anyone who's not that hot on the first one, or who may not have even liked the first one, I recommend this one.
Okay.
Because it's different enough.
Are you excited for the potential Gladiator 3?
Is there actually talk for Gladiator 3?
Ridley Scott was teasing it the whole time he was doing press for this one.
Oh, okay.
Like, it wouldn't be 20 years from now, but I think it would be like what the process is for Lucius rebuilding Rome. And
yeah, that would be interesting. It would be interesting to see a continuation of this story is that outside of the Colosseum and more about the politics of Rome. It would not be as popular as the first and second one. It probably wouldn't draw that much attention, but it would be interesting to see how that would work. And I'm one of the people that would be interested in seeing that.
Oh, man. Gladiator 3, The Phantom Menace.
Gladiator 3, The Senate.
Yeah. Paul Mescal hosted SNL, and they did a Gladiator 2 sketch. I'm going to have to send you guys in the chat then.
Okay.
So that does it with our conversation for Gladiator 2. Next week is Devon's pick, and he sent me 2 posters earlier and let me pick which one I wanted him to pick for next week. So my pick for Devon's pick is we're going to continue his series of making us watch all of the James Bond films with Yolt. You Only Live Twice. I'm going to call it Yolt. But so yeah, tune in next week for that. Devin will be back here. Maybe I'll take the week off, and then you two can talk about Bond, because that seems to be what we're doing lately. But yeah, that's what we've got this week. Make sure to like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can watch us live each week. Facebook Live is going to be a thing of the past for us, I believe. But make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to follow Rum Runners Podcast Network. They've been teasing some stuff on their social media pages, so stay tuned to find out what that is, because I also have no idea. But yeah, and make sure to check out all the other Rum Runners Podcast Network podcasts. Until next time, for You Have to Watch This Podcast, I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And were you not entertained?